And you can make a
7.
plate and bring it over.
3 administrators, 4 teachers. She's like one of the special ed supervisors.
Okay.
Angela Aguilar, who's the preschool trainer, and Danielle Castaldo, who is.
At this time, I'd like to recall to order the Suffern Central School Board, April 16th, 2019 meeting. Please stand for the pledge.
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There's a bunch of seats up front, if anybody would like to move up. Thank you all for being here today for a very pleasant occasion that we're excited and delighted to celebrate our tenure recipients today. And before we do that, we have a couple of business items to take care of really quickly. First, I'd like to entertain a motion to change the order of business pursuant to policy 2350 in order to take action on item 2.01, which includes tenure decisions, to start prior to the budget presentation. Motion? 0 second. Mr. Cairns, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those against? No one? No abstentions. Moved. Student report. Do we have our student in the audience? Okay, if our student arrives later, we might have to make another motion to change the order. Minutes of the regular meeting of April 2nd, 2019. Motion to adopt the minutes of April 2nd. Mr. McKenzie, second. Who's second? Mr. Parents. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those against? You have to abstain on April 2nd. You can make the motion, but, okay, so. I think one of us remembers. So one abstaining from Terrence. Minutes adopted. Acting superintendent comments. We will be honoring a special group of students today. Today we're honoring students of the Suffern High School who are nominated or finalists for the National Merit Award.
Here? I don't see them. I don't see them.
fact, we were so impressed with Jesse's candidacy that Dan Carter and I considered actually double parking Jesse's car in the Solsburg parking lot until he agreed to join us. Jesse drove down from Rhode Island so we like our chances. In observing Jesse's class environment, he's an approachable, focused professional who's being comfortable and asking questions, taking risks, and learning with them. Jesse will often hold light conversations with students when instructing them. Jesse possesses a keen ability to observe the students' instrumental skills while providing them with prompts and specific feedback. Interesting enough, following our winter and spring conference, Jesse invites students to his classroom and they can both view and analyze their performance as he speaks. Thank you very much. He's established a supportive classroom environment that promotes high expectations and emphasis on effort. A proponent of music education, Jesse is enthusiastically assisting his colleagues in performing hip orchestra at the 7th and 8th grade musicals, conducting national solo festivals, and co-training intermediate all-time vocal professionals. Jesse, in part-time, also serves as supplement assistant marching band director for Sydney for Young Men. During his time in Suffolk, Jesse has displayed a consistent willingness to learn, to develop a strong rapport with students, families, and colleagues, and he continues to admit his enthusiasm for music education. Jesse has demonstrated his own ability to play the violin at a very high level, and we remain quite proud of him and working steadfastly to obtain his master's degree in music education while attending Crane School of Music at St. Cosmos. That's great.
I'd like to offer congratulations to Jesse, who I just really first had a conversation with this week, and it was a really interesting conversation based on his violin playing, because he was in the pit of Annie when I went to watch Annie, and he was fabulous. So Jesse, congratulations.
Thanks.
Next, I'd like to bring up Dr. Teresa Ivy from Montebello Elementary, and she will speak about her candidate.
I also have to look at this. Good evening. It is with great pride that I stand here tonight to make a tenure recommendation for Montebello's speech and language pathologist, Mrs. Sandy DeSimone. Sandy. Sandy joined Montebello 4 years ago, though I can't remember a time when she was not part of our school community. Sandy has had a powerful impact on the staff and students at Montebello in her time with us. Today I asked students to list some words that describe you. The list captures all who Sandy is to her students, and I thought it would be best to help everyone understand and see who she is and what she means to the students if I shared some of those words with you. Mrs. DeSimone is humble, joyful, amazing, awesome, brave, helpful, mindful, beautiful, passionate, loving, kind, special, calm, clever, respectful, persistent, magical, and magnificent. Additionally, 2 students wrote, "I love you, Mrs. DeSimone. You're special, to the school and me. And another student wrote, "There are so many reasons I love you. I don't know where to start." One of her colleagues said, "We have all found a bright light and a caring friend since Sandy joined Montebello." Other colleagues described Sandy as eloquent, selfless, motivational, encouraging, and inspirational. And Sandy, tonight is a special night, and tenure is something to be celebrated. But what I really want you to walk away with is an understanding of the profound impact you have had on the lives you touch. You sent an email to all of us earlier today and thanked us for our hard work and dedication to the students. And I am here to publicly thank you for your passion and commitment to the students and to our school. You also said that you have spent the last 4 years marveling at the resilience and grace demonstrated by your colleagues. But Sandy, it is without reservation that I stand here tonight and say that we have marveled at the resilience and grace you have demonstrated. On behalf of Montebello's staff, students, and parents, we look forward to your continued success, and we thank you for being you. Congratulations. Congratulations, Sandy. Next, I'd like to present Mr. Pat Green from Suffern High School to introduce his candidate.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to congratulate all our tenure recipients this evening. And I'm honored to introduce two faculty members from Suffern High School. The first is Mr. Richard Murray. Please come on up. That's far enough. And I'm not going to hold your hand. Richard is a special education and math teacher at Suffern High School. He received his BA from the Rochester Institute of Technology in Math and Engineering Studies. He received his Master's of Science in Education from Pace University. Prior to officially coming to Suffern Central, Rich was no stranger to the high school, as he had been a special ed math teacher in our in-house Rockland BOCES program at Suffern High School for 9 years. For the past 3 years, Rich has taught algebra in both our inclusion and our learning center programs. And what has always impressed me about Rich is his ability to connect and collaborate with students in many different ways. Rich brings a number of skill sets to the table, aside from his instruction. For those of you that were fortunate enough to see Phantom of the Opera, you saw a lot of beautiful, elaborate, and technical set designs. And we credit Rich with a lot of that work. He's worked with about 10 students, and this is something that just gets better and better every year. And so we are very happy to award you tenure this evening, and we look forward to many years of continued success here at Suffern High School. Next, I'd like to introduce Ms. Stephanie Powell. Please come on down. ENL, or English as a New Language teacher at Suffern High School. Stephanie received her BA degree from Fordham University and her master's from Manhattanville College. Prior to coming to Suffern, Stephanie worked for 9 years as an ENL teacher in grades K through 12 for the Minisink School District. Stephanie also serves as an adjunct professor at Manhattanville College in their TESOL program, and this year also began teaching through New Paltz in their Master's of Literacy program. During her time at Suffern, Stephanie has taught in our co-taught ENL Social Studies classrooms, our ENL seminar classrooms, as well as our ENL emerging classes. She has also provided timely and invaluable professional development opportunities to our faculty, which were deeply needed at the time. For the past 3 years, Ms. Powell has also been extensively involved in the extracurricular lives of our students. She is the coach of our JV boys volleyball team, co-advisor of IUTA, which means help, a cross-cultural tutoring club, class advisor for the class of 2022, HAC co-advisor, that's Heroes and Cool Kids, and Becca's Closet, a new club that collects and distributes prom dresses to students in need. Congratulations, and thank you, Stephanie.
She knows the right angle. I got you, thanks.
Congratulations, both Rich and Stephanie. Really exciting from the high school. From the middle school, we have Mr. Fox.
I'm somewhere between Teresa and Jen. Very tough act to follow. I got to brush up on my routine, but thank you, Dr. Castaldo, members of the Board of Education. I have 2 members of our school community here today to present to you for tenure. Right now, I'd like to call up Carolyn Scogler. Come on up, Carolyn. I too will not be holding any hands. Carolyn is currently a special education teacher here at Suffern Middle School. She currently teaches ELA and social studies to our Learning Center students in grade 8. Carolyn came to us with a really strong background. She went to UMass Amherst for her BS in communication disorders, Hunter College for special ed, her master's, and Manhattanville College to be certified in BCBA. She's had a wide range of teaching experience before coming to us as well. She taught for 7 years in the Bronx as a speech teacher, special ed leave at Montebello and Pearl River in elementary schools, and then we finally snagged her here at Suffern Middle School. If you walk into Carolyn's class, you see incredible levels of student engagement, thoughtful and well-planned instruction, and a laser-like focus on the specific and unique needs of her students. She excels in identifying both academic and social emotional needs of her kids. When you talk to her kids, and I did talk to some of her students, don't be concerned. Her students feel that her demeanor is warm, energetic, and approachable. She teaches some of our neediest students here in our building, and she does so by ensuring that they're included in everything we do. And Carolyn, some of this falls into the range of things you don't know about people you hired. I had brought an ENL consultant into her classroom to watch her teach, and the consultant, Dr. Butaro, for those of you who have seen her, knows she's not an easy person to impress, was gushing about Carolyn's teaching, and she walked up to her and said, "You did this technique, and Carolyn's like, "Well, yeah, I was trained as a linguist, but I don't know what you're telling me I'm doing right now." So, but needless to say, I got the accolades for that, so thank you, Carolyn. Carolyn has also distinguished herself by becoming involved in the school and community. Her and her family are community members here. She's coached the Suffern Sea Lions for 20 plus years. She also works in our ENL after school program. Mrs. Skoglund is married to Mr. Skoglund, and I say that glib, but he teaches at Montebello Elementary School. We've had all 3 of your children here already. Your daughter Emma's a senior at Suffern High School. Karen is a sophomore, and Kira and your husband Kirk are here with us tonight. So Carolyn, congratulations on your tenure. It's well deserved. All right, and my final candidate for tenure this evening is Danielle Castaldo, our assistant principal. So, she's my assistant principal. I did. I stole her from Dr. Castaldo in PPS several years ago, 4 years ago, to be exact, and I'm thrilled that I did. She earned this position without a doubt. She came to us with an extensive background that had prepared her very well for being assistant principal here at Suffern Middle School. She earned her bachelor's in special ed from LIU, a master's in instructional technology from New York Institute of Technology, and her advanced certificate in district leadership from LIU as well. She started teaching back in '98, right? Margaret Chapman School. She moved on to Chestnut Ridge Middle School, teaching students with emotional and developmental disabilities, and was at Eastchester School District for 12 years before coming here to Suffern Central School District. I think it was still around for Central back then, as an administrator. She was the supervisor of elementary education then, and then moved up to be, I don't know if that's moving up, or moved on to be the supervisor of secondary special ed. And then she served as my interim assistant principal for a few months when I really got to know Danielle. Since day one, she's had a positive impact on our school. She has an innate ability to review a process or a practice and bring order to it. I am not the organized one. She is the organized one. As a principal, you always hire people who compliment you. She definitely compliments me. You walk into her office when she's going through a process, there are lots of colorful index cards, highlighters, everything is organized. My desk is all piles. So she's been instrumental in developing a lot of different things here that, you know, I'm continue to be amazed about. The response to intervention program that we have has led to a tremendous amount of personalized education and multi-tiered levels of support for our students. She's led several curricular initiatives. She worked recently with the Suffern High School History Department and our middle school social studies teachers to ensure common learning experiences for all students. And she's also worked diligently to ensure that our English language learners are integrated within all our learning experiences here at Suffern Middle School. One of the things I'm most proud of Danielle for is her work to bring social emotional learning to Suffern Middle School. A few years ago, she worked with the PTA Council to bring the KIND campaign to our school. We always keep track of different kinds of bullying in school, but one of the things we noticed was that we had a problem with girl-to-girl bullying here at Suffern Middle School. The KIND campaign addressed this issue. We saw an immediate reduction in those bullying behaviors between girls, and it was so successful that even the founders of the organization came here to speak to us the year after that. Thanks to Danielle's leadership, the program is now in its third year, and the feedback we receive from students and parents is nothing short of amazing about the positive impact this program has had on our students. She even sought and pushed for a program for the boys in our school, but it took the guys here a few years to catch up. So we finally rolled out our program this year, so Danielle, it only took me 3 years. But to be fair, there aren't as many men here as there are women, so we're a little outnumbered. Danielle's a valued member of my administrative team. Her perspective is one I inherently value. I could not really imagine running the middle school these days without her. She's part and parcel of the positive culture she's helped to create, and she continues to exceed my expectations in everything she does. And really the best thing about her is what you see is what you get. Getting tenure tonight, it's not going to change who she is. She's still going to speak her mind to me. She's still going to tell me what she thinks of me. Sometimes behind closed doors there's some colorful language related to that. But I have no doubt that awarding Danielle tenure is one of the best things we've done here. So congratulations.
second time here at Suffern Central, because she was here before as a member of the PPS department, and we still miss her greatly. Great asset to the team.
You can't have her back.
That remains to be seen.
Please don't.
We can have a conversation.
I'll beg.
I don't know, I know her well. We did do that advanced certificate, Danielle and I did together at LIU, so we've known each other a long time. And she's married to the Castaldo boys from North Rockland, and I'm one of the Castaldo girls from North Rockland, and we are not related at all. People think we are, and the best is when I'm asked if I'm her mom. I prefer when they assume I'm her sister, so. Okay, our next person up for receiving tenure tonight is one of our administrative team, Ms. Angela Aguilar. I'm not so sure that I did her last name justice. She rolls that R and all that much better than I did. Angela began her career actually at Suffern Central, at Suffern Middle School as an assistant principal. And I'm sure if I asked Brian Fox today, he'd still say that he misses her and would like her back. He wants all three of you. I don't need to. And Teresa, he wants all of them. She was a great addition at the middle school, and they were sad to see her go. But their loss was Cherry Lane Elementary School's gain. Angela has been principal there for 4 years and has made quite a mark. She is highly organized, thorough, and detail-oriented leader who meets her staff and her students where they are and helps them grow to the next spot. She fosters collaboration among her staff to meet her school's goals. She has been supportive of innovative programs at Cherry Lane Elementary, such as Makerspace, Learning Opportunity Groups, Family Literacy Night, and in collaboration with the PPS department, our primary and early foundations classes. Additionally, Angela is always quite open and flexible, and this year offered to host one of our community collaborative partnerships. So she actually hosted some people who were getting their teaching assistant certification for teaching assistants in our early foundations and primary foundations classes who are currently at the Camp for the Blind. It sits in Chestnut Ridge. So we were able to offer those people a collaborative teaching assistant experience so they could earn their degrees. And Angela was a big piece of that program. Angela has fostered effective relationships with the families of Cherry Lane and demonstrates genuine caring and concern for her students. She promotes and models the common goals to educate their hearts and their minds of her students, and we are proud to have her here at Suffern Central. Congratulations on your tenure, Angela. Our last person receiving tenure tonight is an administrator as well, Taryn Soto, and she is currently Acting Director of People Personnel Services. She's receiving tenure as Supervisor of Elementary Special Services at E&L. Taryn had to leave us because her daughter was in a concert tonight in North Rockland. I'm going to read the letter regarding her nonetheless, so it's in the record. So if you could all just bear with me. In her 4 short years here at Suffern Central, Taryn has become an integral and pivotal member of the PPS department. Cheers, Bill. She has built strong relationships with families and Suffern faculty and has used those relationships to build collaborative plans to support students. I'm sorry.
instrumental in creating instructional programs at the elementary level that have allowed Suffern Central students to obtain instruction in their community with their peers. Taryn has extensive knowledge of and access with ease of out-of-district resources that support Suffern Central students and their families. She has deep connections with other county agencies and calls upon these whenever it will assist our students. Additionally, Taryn has led our E&L program K-12, providing professional development, support, faculty evaluations, and facilitating the New York State bilingual grant to ensure that our E&L students receive the instructional opportunities they deserve. Congratulations, Taryn. It has been an honor to work with you.
Congratulations to all our tenure recipients. You've been already an integral part of the Suffern Central team, and today we celebrate you. So welcome to all your families to celebrate with you today. Feel free to help yourself with more refreshments and delicious food over there. We're going to ask our principal, Mr. Pat Reedon, to come back because some of our students' Merit Awards recipients are here with us now, so we're going to call them up.
Thank you. Going to pull up our National Merit Commended Students. The following National Merit Commended students placed in the top 5% of the 1.5 million students who entered the competition through their performance on the PSAT. They've demonstrated outstanding potential for academic success. Sarah Chen. Julia Christian. Stefan DeCrepit. Khalil Zuta. Isabella Glassman. Danielle Manos. Audrey Risco. Now for our National Merit finalists. The following National Merit finalists placed in the top half of 1% of the 1.5 million students who qualified for their performance on the PSAT. Being selected as a finalist opens the door to many scholarship opportunities to the National Merit Scholarship Clearinghouse, and these students are to be commended and recognized for their distinguished performance and future academic accomplishment. Michelle Chen. Darwin here? I think he's doing robotics. Yeah. Okay, and Ethan's doing robotics. So, congratulations.
This time, I would like to call back our student, Suffern High School, Penny Nick Pine.
Yesterday was the band bonanza at Suffern High School.
And tomorrow will be the string extravaganza, also at Situate High School. April 19th begins spring recess, and that will be until April 29th. On April 30th is the History and English Honor Society induction for juniors and new people into those honor societies. May 1st is the STIR Symposium, where the STIR students will present the project they've been working on. May 2nd is the Senior Art Showcase for seniors in AP Art. And on May 6th, AP exams begin.
Thank you, Maddie. Good luck with your exams.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. At this time, we will temporarily adjourn the meeting to start our budget workshop. We will take a quick, literally 5 minutes. If anybody wants to get a drink or food, we'll get right back.
Don't mind me, I'm not sneaking up on you, I'm just stealing this.
Cop job here with duct tape, it looks like. You didn't use Gorilla Tape?
That's better than the crazy. Remember the guy used to do the pull-up on the iron and then hold the helmet?
Yeah, hold on.
The crazy glue.
Been replaced by Gorilla.
Yeah, exactly.
Gorilla glue is 100 times better. Wow.
Yep. Late May, I guess. Did you have a strawberry? I counted them. Okay, very pleasant. Let's hope it's over that way. Yes. Best friends. Exactly. I'd like everyone at their seats. Maybe I made a mistake sending them off. No, it's not you. It's those board members that are not coming back.
I don't want to get in trouble either. I'm a good listener. I'm going back.
You're not in trouble. They're not at their seats. See, there's still 3 musketeers here are missing.
Okay.
All right, so we're gonna do the budget next,
Okay, and then what? The budget next and then what?
and then we recall to order the meeting, and then we start our votes.
Oh, okay, you're gonna do consent agenda like usual? Try to.
And I forgot to do this.
No, you pulled it out of order.
To vote on it.
Yeah, I think, did you not vote on it? Okay then.
We voted on pulling it out of order,
Right. Okay, so.
so we'll
just-
vote on it
yeah.
separately. Oh my God, I had to mess this up.
Right, I promise I will never cry again. I never cry in public. I can't believe I did that. I'm so upset. I'm sorry.
Love her, and
Sorry.
you know you're
I know, but that was not acceptable. I'm very mad at myself
be
right
hard on
now.
yourself. All right, so we need to start. We're running half an hour behind now.
Are we?
That's okay. It should be a quick moving after that.
Oh, I don't care about me. I don't want. You're the one who's wearing a suit.
I don't know where. Oh, Donnelly's over there.
Because I do. No, it's not. Don't ever think that when someone is in love with you, they just know.
Matt, you want to get closer? You're bonding with Heather?
He's holding
There's
hands
like a big
there.
separation. This is your seat. Have you picked on this? It has to be the same exact.
Everywhere.
Happy.
I didn't know what to do when we walked in that room today. I'm like,
That was very difficult.
threw me off. Threw me off.
Welcome.
Everywhere.
Okay.
And they spend so much money on phones.
Okay, so we will start our budget presentation with our Director of Business, Ms. Teresa Isolde.
Good evening. I know we went through this the other day. Whoa, sorry. I know we went through this the other day, and we had a lot of questions. But I'm going to go through this a lot more quickly tonight, so that in the interest of time. Okay. So last week we talked about that the salaries are going up about $1.9 million. And that's basically explained, much of it besides raises, more by these staff changes. We talked about this. We're adding a bilingual grade 1, which is mandated, elementary guidance, which is mandated, maintenance supervisor, which is the reinstatement of the person that we promoted to the director of facilities, adding somebody in technology. We have some retirements, a couple of part-time enrollment-based FTE reductions, and 2 elementary people that may be able to fill some other positions that we have open, but we don't know it. Last time I just gave a quick update on enrollment, and we talked about the FTE reductions, and part of that is the enrollment. This was a number, and you kind of got to ignore it by, I know we're going to talk about rebalancing later, but anyway, right now we have about 111 incoming K and outgoing about 296. Benefits was a big reduction for us this year, and that helped offset some of the other costs. Basically, we had a huge decrease in the TRS rates, which is our highest retirement. We have both ERS and TRS rates, which are the teacher's retirement, and that dropped nearly 2%. The ERS rates were flat, and the estimated health insurance increase usually could be 8 to 10%. This year was about 5%, so that was not a cost savings, obviously, but less than it usually is. We had some questions. We had some questions about this last time. We actually changed this from special education to special services because although almost 11 million of it is special education costs, there's other costs like health services, which is, we talked about, we provide services for the schools in our district. We have nursing services, and we charge them back to the district of origin of those children, and some other minor costs that are in there. So what I wanted to say that's important is that special services budget does not include salaries. So as we create these new special education classes, the special services budget decreases mainly because of BOCES or private tuitions. As we bring these children back in, our salary budget increases, but it looks like the special services number is decreasing, but that is far from the truth. As you see, just an example, in 17-18, we had a budget of $11,322,000, and we actually spent about $600,000 less that year. So even though it looks like there's a decrease, it's because things are moving around, and we're not ending any programs or anything in special education. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was debt service. So we talked about this the other day when we were saying that we knew that we were going to have about a $2.3 million shortfall because of the way the bonds were aided back 15 years ago when we first started some of these projects. We got aid on the project as soon as we started the project. Now you have to wait for a final cost report before you start getting aid, and we also some of the debt services out longer than the aid. So right now, and I wanted to show several years so you understand that I know we reduced used $1 million basically in reserve this time and lowered our tax rate, but you're going to have the same problem over the next 2 years because even though we're using $636,000, the rest of that debt service reserve that we talked about, that's only for building projects, we're going to still have a deficit of $830,000 and the year after about $1 million. So we're going to have to find money for that. The other thing we talked about is transportation. Those costs are mainly due to the non-public increase. As you can see, we have about 300 more children, which is about $600,000 in cost. We also added a bus, which is about between $95,000 and $100,000 for this rebalancing. We're not 100% sure what we're going to need, but we have to be prepared for it in the budget. So just as you can see, and it's a little small, I apologize, but this is the non-public transportation over basically the last 10 years. And you could see that we had, in the first, like from 10, 11 to maybe 13, 14, was pretty steady, and then it started to increase. And the last few years, it's really exploded. So that the costs are going to go up, and we don't know anything that's going to be any different. So this year, at the beginning, I believe it was 793. I'm sorry, and then at the end of the year, we actually added 115 more kids, so it was 8. I'm used to being closer when I make these presentations. So we had 833, and then we added 115 kids during the year. And now, recently, we're to have 1,136 children. The other thing is buildings and grounds, and we have some initiatives we're going to do next year. Some of the things we're going to do is we're trying to increase our the PA systems throughout the schools to make it better safety-wise. We're going to install air conditioning units. Some of this stuff is actually being done now. We find that we have a little money because some project maybe didn't cost us as much, then we go ahead and do it. The other other thing we're gonna do for safety reasons is the Montebello sidewalk. Because of we talked about this last time, the children, it's a very small area for Montebello and the drop off and pickup, and we wanna make it safer for the students, so we're gonna put a sidewalk on one side and keep all the students on one side. We've been working on it, some LED and ceiling upgrades, which will continue. We're gonna do some library improvements at Viola, some painting, and we're going to start improving our playgrounds in the elementary schools every year. The other thing that came up was other, which is about $6 million. And you can see that's spread mostly in planned balance, which planned balance is several $1 million that we use. We get our money mostly from taxes, and you'll see that later. We don't get taxes till September. I need some cash to be able to run the business in the summer. So to do that, we kind of build in a fund there, and on the other side, you see it in our revenue. So it's like a wash, but at least I have some cash at the beginning of the year, which is left over from the prior year, so I'm able to run the business during the year. And this is where the money goes. So you see most of our costs are salaries and benefits and special services and a little piece of the pie, but most of it is salaries and benefits. Oh, I'm sorry. Can we go back to the other slide a second? One more. So what I want to talk about is, I know you asked me I had put $100,000 more in the legal fees, so I took that back out. I wasn't sure, like, I spoke to, well, I had somebody speak to Shaw, the formula was a little different, but you asked me to do it, so basically I did it, but I did add that money back to benefits because of the dental, yes.
Teresa, I know we talked the other night there. We didn't have, did we get a bill from Shaw for what he's done so far?
No, I'm missing February and March. I'm concerned about the legal fees and what they're gonna be, so I did email him and I emailed our other
Mr.
attorney.
Fromson too, we don't
Yes,
have February and March
I
either.
actually did get it tonight, I
Oh,
actually did.
today?
So, I didn't realize we actually had February, and now we have March.
Great.
And I've asked them both for the invoices.
If you
I
could
got that
share
one today.
those with all of us.
Right,
please.
when I get that, I will share that, but, yeah, I am concerned what our legal bills are gonna be and see if we have, what kind of money I might have to move around, so I did ask about that, so,
But you did put the $100,000 back into.
no, I actually, the consensus was to take it out, and that's what I did.
Then where are we gonna get it from?
She put it in the dental benefits, it's
Well, the
right?
dental
That's what you
benefits
said?
are real, I actually spoke to the person from benefits because there was a little confusion about the cost of the benefits, and we thought they were going down and they weren't, so I basically added that back. Well, hopefully they'll be under, if not, we'll have to find somewhere to.
But you were comfortable, when we spoke last week, you were very comfortable putting $100,000 in. In fact, I think you even led me to believe that we're probably gonna go over the $100,000.
Well, here's how I do. When we do the budget, we compare the last few years of expenses. So what I did this year, where I got that $100,000 number from, was I looked at the cost per hour of our legal fees now for our current attorney, and the cost per hour for other attorneys, and they're about 40% more, and that's how I got the $100,000. But it seemed like the consensus that they wanted, I talked to them, the formula was.
So when we ask the attorneys that have picked up additional responsibilities beyond special ed, because they're representing us for personnel and labor, their billing system is very different, and they said we don't anticipate an increase, even though the hourly is higher.
We're paying them 40% more, and you're telling me we're not anticipating
Yes, so
an
it's a
increase?
discussion that
Formula's
you
a
have to look
formula,
at
but
both
if
types
you-
of bills actually that were forwarded to you, and you'll see a huge difference in billing style.
But we're paying 40% more, so we're paying the guy $200.
But if you have fewer hours, the outcome is a smaller total.
How do you find fewer hours with what's going on?
By comparing the bills we received, the
I
billing
can't
style is
believe
very
that.
different.
I can't believe that.
Well, that's what the attorneys have advised, so.
Well, they can say anything. When we get the bill, we gotta pay it.
Their billing style for special ed has been with the district for a very long time, right? For special education, we use the same firm?
Lisa, you might know that better than I
Right,
do.
well before I started, so.
Right, so they've
at
been
least
representing
10
the
to 12
district
years
for a
at
long
least.
time. So we have a pattern that we can look at.
Right.
And
But
it's
we
very
do have a
different.
new pattern here from from Mr. Shaw
It's
coming
the
in.
same firm.
We're paying him 40% more than what we pay Mr. Thompson.
They charge for special education more hourly already, and it's a different type of bill, you will see.
Different type of bill, but it's still $200 and some an hour, as opposed to
But
zero
there's-
last year.
But what she's saying is there's less hours, Tom. The less hours compensate for the more hours that more
Well, I'll
he's
be
paid per
happy
hour.
to see that.
It-
I
You
just
have,
don't-
you have it
that's-
on your email, that's the thing. You received
Let's
all
look
the
at it.
bills for a year and a half on your
We
email.
didn't get any bills from February from Mr. Shaw.
But you have the same firm covering the last year and a half for special ed. It's the same exact,
But I'm not talking special ed,
But
I'm talking,
the same firm bills the same way.
there's more hours, there's more time, there's more nonsense.
I think what Tom is saying is that special ed is special ed, or special services is special services. But this is in addition to that, which is not part of special services. So if it's an addition, therefore there's other hours. There's additional hours that that firm is going to be working with us.
Instead of another.
The other firm is
Replacing another
Thompson,
firm.
and his hours will be declining,
Right.
and Shaw's will be going up a bit.
Right, at 40% more.
At 40% more.
And if you look at if you open the many files that Ms. Isolde forwarded, it's a very different type of bill. It's not as many hours in general at all.
Okay.
And it's a different type of practice, and we actually hear that there's supposed to be a certain average for a district, a certain size, and yes, if you have other legal issues going on,
Okay.
you factor for that. Even factoring for that, it will never hit the numbers that were added after the budget was already set up.
Okay.
And that was an addition, if you recall, on March 19th.
Okay.
That wasn't in the original budget.
All right, but let's talk about the 2 months that we don't have. And I think we'd all like to see those 2 months from both firms.
All right.
All right?
I'd like
That's
to.
one thing.
Mhm.
And I know that this is not an average district. We're above average in everything that we do. So I think that we should be thinking that way also.
Right, but
Okay.
I was advised by the attorneys that that was very inflated and that we don't need to budget that much over.
Thompson bills will be going down.
So,
I'm not-
and they
I'm
have,
I'm
and
not
they have, if
arguing
you look
who's
at the
going
trend.
down, who's
No, but
going up.
if you look at month to month, even though we didn't have February and March from both firms, we didn't
Right,
have that,
right.
it has declined, so.
Teresa, is it normal to be 2 months behind in your billing?
That happens sometimes, it's not abnormal,
Is it
but I'm
typical?
going to ask them to keep up to date month to month, because I
I
think
would
that's
think
important.
monthly,
Because we-
O&R comes every
you know,
month.
Right, and, you know, truthfully, in the past, we've had an idea what the bills are. They've been kind of close every month, around the same, and we know what's going on, and now I don't know, because I don't
Exactly.
know all the
And we're
work that's
trying
being
to
done.
put
And if
figures
it
together.
is higher, another line will come out lower, so it's not a risky practice to move things, shift things around as needed, correct?
Well, I don't wanna
You'll
take
be
it
able
out
to
of the
shift from
dental
another
bill
item
when-
if you're a
when
little
we
over,
know
but it's not
legal
100,000
things.
over.
I can't answer that. His formula, like you're saying, is an average. He explained that he takes the budget and takes a percentage of that, and that's how he figures that. You know, it's hard to say because you're switching from one to the other. So basically, I always try to go on past expenses. That's how we build a budget. It's not just legal fees. We do that with everything. We look at what we spent and what caused certain things to be higher or lower in the year. And then, in this case, what I did was go through those few years, take 40% because of the increase in, and it's, you know, it doesn't have, you know, I know we're going out for an RP, that's why I did it. It could be somebody different, that's a different charge, but at right now, this rate, I thought it was a comfortable situation to add the 40%. You guys didn't want me to, and I took it out. Could we have a problem? We could have a problem this year. We could have a problem
Right.
next year.
Okay.
Thank you.
Revenues. So the other side of the budget is revenues, and I wanted to explain just a couple things. I talked about the planned balance. which is where I build in some expenditures on one side, so I have money to spend during the summer, and here's the other side. So the money that we have in the budget this year will become revenue in the next year because we don't spend it for the summer, which is the next year. It's a little complicated, but that's how we're able to pay our bills during the summer. So a big part of this is unclassified revenues and pilots. Some of that is BOCES refund because BOCES doesn't make any money, so at the end of the year, everything they have left, they split between the districts. But a big part of this is over $2 million is pilots. Pilots are payments in lieu of taxes. A lot of times a company might, like Avon, might want to move out, but we give them some kind of incentive to stay. Somebody like Raymore and Flanagan, when Dressbarn closed, might want to move in, so we give them an incentive to stay. And all this is actually done through the town of Ramapo. It's not really our thing, but it's, you know, you have some kind of steady income with these companies, and you know they have a 20-year plan, a 15-year plan, whatever it is that they're going to be staying and having that tax revenue for years. The other thing I want to explain quickly is state aid. So we get money from the state. That's one more second, sorry. The biggest thing I want you to look at here, and I tried to explain it before, was the drop in building aid. Because of the way that the state does state aid on buildings, we had a big $2.3 million fall this year in state aid from building aid, and that's a big deficit that we had to make up. Okay. Some of the other things involved here in that big state aid number are our foundation aid, which is just a general aid, high cost, private excess cost, supplemental excess cost, all have to do with special education and the cost of students. Another thing is transportation aid. We get an aid ratio based on our transportation, high tax aid. You could go leaving that one. So these explain some of them. Foundation aid is unrestricted. All those others are special ed. Transportation is non-capital expenditures. It's based on the formula. We get back about 54% of what we spend. High tax aid is when the tax levy exceeds adjusted gross income of the general public in Suffern Central. Software, library, and textbook are all rates per student. It depends. For software and library, it's the students that are physically located in Suffern Central borders, whether they're going to public or private schools. For textbooks, it's our students and wherever they go. Either they're here or they might be in other schools throughout the county, but we still give them textbook aid. Hardware is a small, it's like $50,000 that's spread over our students. Building aid, I explained a little. And BOCES aid, we get aid on many of our BOCES expenditures at almost 16%. That's a little misleading because you only get a certain amount on people with salaries and you don't get it on certain special ed, but BOCES aid is a big thing. This year I worked with the technology department to spend some money this year, so we'll have some extra aid next year, which is how we were able to raise our revenue. Yes, sir.
Okay, so the drop in building aid, that was something that we kind of knew would be coming?
Yes.
But this is statewide, or is it just, no?
No. So what happened was in 2001, we borrowed $62 million for all the used reservations. In 2004, we borrowed $18 million. In 2002, when we did our it was called an SA 139, we basically say this is how I'm going to spend my money. The job was approved, we started getting aid. But we borrowed bonds over the period as we were spending the money.
Okay.
So we started with $14 million, then we borrowed $38 million. And that's when we started paying the debt on those bonds.
Right.
Also, the debt on those bonds are basically 20 years, where the aid is 15. So there's that drop off. We do things differently now to make it a little easier for people. So that's what that was. Yeah, so about 5 years now we've been talking about it, and here we are, and we're really I'm gonna show you a little bit more that explains when that stops. But so the money basically comes from the taxpayers, you, me, everybody else here that lives in Suffern Central, and we get state aid, and there's some other small revenue sources. This year, we're proposing a 1%, the board decided on a 1% tax levy. Our budget to budget is under 1%, and the total proposed budget is $141,223,319. Proposition 1, and that's what we're going to vote on May 21st, is shall the annual budget be levied? And then I want to talk about Proposition 2, and this is the verbiage for it, but next slide. So basically, we do capital reserve projects. And 2 years ago, the public approved a $10 million project, where every year we can fund part of that, and then we ask the voters to approve the projects that we want to do. So some of the stuff we're gonna do is, a lot of it is safety oriented. We're going to be doing a replacement of a transformer at Sloatsburg Elementary, which is why we're not gonna have the town of Ramapo camp this summer. We had no choice. Suffolk Middle School, we're going to fix the facade. There are several phases involved in that. We're gonna resurface the track. It's from 2004. There's cracking. We can't have kids running around and getting hurt. The thing, and we showed this a couple, I think, in the beginning of March, the thing that is very interesting, and when Mr. Fox showed us, it's this challenge course for the physical education for the middle school students. And it's sort of like a obstacle course, but a little more intense, and we loved it. And I think it's something that the children, the taxpayers will really enjoy. Some of the other things we're doing at Suffolk High School are necessary roof restoration, chiller pump, which is the HVAC system, the air conditioning system, and the library roof. So those things have to be done. So hopefully the taxpayers on May 21st will approve that as well. On Tuesday, May 21st, the polls open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. That's it. Any questions?
So I want to start by saying thank you very, very much, because it was only Thursday that this budget set 2% increase of the tax
I've lost a couple weekends this month.
over the previous budget, and now it says 1%, and we appreciate the work that you have done over the weekend, the last few days. Since Thursday, based on the direction, I believe all the board members, or pretty much the majority, 90% of the board members, my math is a little off, had asked for, and thank you for that, because alleviating the tax burden is definitely important to encourage new young families to move into the district. We all felt very strongly that we need those numbers. We need to make new homeowners able to afford homes in our neighborhoods. So thank you. I appreciate all the work you did. And if you can maybe just in very general terms explain how you came from the 2 down to the 1, where the movement happened.
So, you know, as I had stated before, that I basically trimmed the budget because if you remember, we were $763,000 that we needed to make up when we first got it. Actually, it was over 900. 200,000 I got from the revenue that we received from the state, along with the purchases that Eric and the technology department worked with me about. So 700,000 I cut as much as I could. So the only place I could really get that extra money was reserves. So I put a general reserve reduction. So we have the $900,000 reserve, and we have another million or so dollars for that, and that's as simple as that gets.
So the only movement that happened from Thursday's presentation to today is taking the difference from the reserve.
Well, I moved the 2 expenditures, I explained, I
Right.
subtracted the $100,000 for the legal.
One moved somewhere else, but nothing
Yes,
came
but
off.
No, nothing came off. the
Except
expenditure.
from reserves. Okay.
Exactly.
Just wanted to be clear. Okay? Board questions? Anyone?
Thank you, Teresa.
You're welcome.
You good? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So at this time, the chair will recall to order the official public portion of our Board of Education meeting for April 16th, 2019. Let the record reflect again that all board members are present with the exception of Melissa Reamer, who is not feeling well today. And the time is 8:29. So we had pulled item 201 to vote on it separately, and then did not vote on it separately. So since we pulled it out, we will be voting on 201 only first, and then we'll do a consent agenda for the rest. 2.01, professional personnel report. We celebrated our 10-year recipients earlier this evening, and we need a motion to accept 2.01. Mr. McKenzie, second.
Second.
Mr. Cairns, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those against? Any abstains? Moved. The chair would like to entertain a consent agenda on 2.02 on to the last item, which is 2.20.
I'd like to pull 2.07 and 2.19, please.
Mr. Donnelly pulling 207.
I'd like to pull 2.05.
Okay, give me a second. And 209, Mr. Donnelly?
2.19, please.
09 or 1?
2.19.
19.
That's kind of gonna be hard to go by.
And Mr. Kern?
2.05.
2.05.
2.18.
Which one is the right one?
2.18.
Yes.
Any others?
No.
Mr. McKenzie, good? Okay, so the chair is entertaining a consent action on the following items. I'm gonna list them one by one. 2.02, 03, 04, 06, 08, 09, 2.10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17.
Oh, I have to pull 17, I'm sorry.
Okay, not 17. Mr. McKenzie pulled. And 2.20. Motion? Mr. McKenzie, second.
Second.
Mr. Kern, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those against? Any abstains? Okay, we'll move down to 2.05. Motion? Mr. Kern, second.
Second.
Mr. Cairns, discussion.
I just wanted just a little background because we haven't discussed putting this particular RFP out. So I just wanted to just, sorry? No?
The discussion in the fall was that any stale contracts, you know what, I'll wait till
I don't think this is working.
you wanna try that one.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll just talk loud. Oh, I don't want that.
Not gonna sing? There you go.
That one sounds
Okay,
like it's
can you
working.
ask the question again, Mr.
Yeah,
Kern?
again, I just wanted clarity because we haven't discussed this particular RFP, so I just wanted any background that there is.
So back in July, when we had our reorg meeting on July 10th, the direction most people felt was, can we review all our current contracts where the district is engaging in consulting or external services of any type? And should any of them be stale or not current, can we put them out for a request for bids or a request for proposals, depending on which one. And we started off by, if you recall, recently approving an RFP for our architectural services. Dr. Castaldo brought to our attention that our current special education council contract is also not current. So, nothing against the services, but so that all our contracts are.
Right, so this one, Dr. Stalvin just brought up over the last 2 weeks. That's why I'm
Yes.
here tonight.
Yeah.
And that's why we haven't had any conversation about it prior.
Yeah, Yeah, it was brought to our attention that it's stale, so following the same rule that we've been following, it was put on for action today.
Just wanted the background.
Any further questions or discussion on that item? Okay, if everyone is ready, we will vote on item 2.05, RFP, Special Education Council. Motion?
Move.
Oh, sorry, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any abstains? Any nays? Item is moved. Moving down to 2.07, the 2019-2020 budget adoption. That the Board of Education adopt the 2019-2020 budget in the amount of $141,223,319. Motion?
Moved.
Mr. Shapiro, second.
Second.
Mr. Cairns, discussion.
Yeah, I would just like to mention, as I did last week, my objection to reaching into the reserves to cover a 1% difference in the budget. We know we have some issues with possibly issues coming up with the utility companies, the governor's office, and I don't think we're being prudent in taking monies now when we know we have a couple of shortfalls coming in the next couple of years, and possibly a $2 million loss of revenue from the utility companies. I just have a problem reaching into the revenues. I can't support taking the 1% out of the budget. Almost 2% that was there last week.
So you'd like to raise the tax 2% instead of 1%?
Correct.
Okay. Basically, there's a controller's audit that was done a few years ago, and in it, the recommendation said district officials should develop a plan to use surplus fund balance and unnecessary reserves in a manner that benefits district taxpayers. Basically, the district has been overtaxing the community for a number of years now. It's great to have those large fund balances of millions of dollars, but it's not doing the taxpayers at this point any good. So to take some of the funds out, the Controller's Office has said that Suffern, Ramapo Central has been doing this for a number of years, and you should basically use those funds and not keep on basically putting them into a fund balance and then, asking the taxpayers to increase their taxes in Suffern when we know that taxes in the village, probably taxes in the town would be going up. We're supposed to do basically fiscal responsibility, and this is part of it. There was also a NICET report done last year with regard to Suffern and looking at the finances, and basically it stated the same thing that the Controller's Office stated a few years ago, that the district is collecting too much money from the taxpayers, and it's time basically to stop that a little bit and use some of the funds to keep the tax down for you, because we're all going to be paying that, and I think having 1% tax is better than having a 2% tax or more.
Mr. Shapiro, any comments?
No, not at this time.
Mr.
I
Curran?
just wanted to ask Mr. Cairns, the report you're reading from,
Yeah.
can you just give me the date of the report?
Right, the date was 2011 through 2013, okay? And the NICET report was done last year.
So the report from 2011 to 2013, I just do the date of the actual filing of the report by chance?
I'm sorry?
Do the date of, and I'm getting some kind of feedback, but the date that that report was filed or presented?
It's September 2013.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Curran, any further comments or questions?
No.
Mr. McKenzie?
I think Mr. Carnes articulated it just fine. I think that.
Okay.
we
I'd
need
like to
start
just
doing more.
clarify on the item regarding the utility bill. We are, as a district, advocating against utility-owned land getting any reassessments to reduce their tax burden, because that should that happen in the state of New York, that will increase the tax burden on the taxpayers. It does not take any money out of the budget of the district. It does not reduce our revenue. It unfortunately adds the burden on the residents of the district. Therefore, any break we can provide our community members now so that it doesn't cumulatively increase exponentially, we should do it while we can and while the district can afford it without reducing any staff. There are no layoffs, and without reducing any programs in Suffern Central. So hopefully we can continue together to advocate against that tax reduction on utility-owned land. It's very important that we stay vigilant on that and that it doesn't pass, but it would not reduce the income to the district. It would shift whatever the utility companies are paying, a large percentage of it to the residents. So I just wanted to clarify that. If there are no further comments or questions, we will call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against?
Aye. Nay.
Mr. Donnelly? All those abstaining? None. Item moved. Next is 2.17, Mr. McKenzie pulled. Motion on the floor, please.
Moved.
Mr. McKenzie, second.
Second.
Mr. Shapiro, discussion.
I just need to abstain from this vote because she's a family member.
Okay. Thank you for alerting us to that. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those against? None? Any abstains?
I abstain.
Thank you. One abstain, Mr. McKenzie. Item 2.18, Policy 1120. This is the third reading. The policy needed to be voted on at the second reading, but it was preferred and requested that it stays as a discussion for the second reading. So today is the third reading on the policy. The policy has to do with FOIL appeal requests, which currently the regulation states that FOIL appeal requests go to the President of the Board of Education as a representative of the board, and now the policy would align with the current regulation. Motion?
Moved.
Mr. McKenzie? Second?
Second.
Who yelled first?
I give it to Paul.
No, it was all done.
After the motion. Mr. Cairns? Discussion.
I just wanted to reiterate from the last time we pulled this, that the wording in the policy as you're trying to approve tonight is outdated, and the NISBA regulation as of January 2016 is for the superintendent to receive FOIL appeals, and not for the board president to receive FOIL appeals. And since policy hasn't changed since we pulled it, I feel it's necessary to say it again.
So I'll respond to that real quick. I reached out to NISBA's policy department, and it took a few calls. That's why I didn't have this information before. She just returned from maternity leave, and their samples are intended to be open-ended, where districts can elect whatever is convenient and works for each individual district. So they don't have a rule as to who the appeals should go to, and she reiterated it's totally up to, obviously, the Board of Education to elect what works for that, the majority of the FOILs that are coming in. Should they go to, one party or the other? Assuming at the end of the day that all FOIL appeals go back to the attorney for review and to the board clerk. Thank you for all the work you've been doing. I know you've been busy. Heather, and that the board president is not or the superintendent are not indicative of who's gonna make the final call. It's still gonna be checked from a legal perspective and go through the same process, but with a finer comb, basically, since the first response did not produce an outcome that the FOIL requester is satisfied with. It doesn't mean the second response is gonna be any different. It's just checks and balances and a second round at it. So that's what she explained to me.
Okay, I'm just curious, because again, last time we spoke about this, and I said that I had spoken with policy department in Nisbet, which is the email that I have here, which again states that it should be the superintendent, and that's direct from the policy person at Nisbet. So I'm just curious if you had that in writing.
No, we had a verbal conversation, and I'd be happy to share her name. She just got back to her department.
So maybe now more than ever, we should not be voting on this if you and I have conflicting information apparently from Nisbet.
I mean, this was reviewed by Mr. Fromson and edited during the policy committee meeting. The policy committee made the recommendation to the board, and I think we would need to act on it. It's the third reading already.
You said that was a municipal regulation. I don't think it's a regulation.
It is, it's right here.
I think it's a recommendation though, right?
Sample regulation. Yep.
NISBA doesn't make regulations, though.
And here's the older one.
Right.
This is a sample
Yes,
regulation.
sample NISBA regulation, that's what they provide.
Regulation
Generally follow.
is what they're using to describe a policy. The policy is the regulation, but NISBA does not regulate school boards.
If we have different interpretations, then that's fine. But again, since we have such different interpretations, perhaps it's improper to vote on it right now, but if you want to vote, then we can vote.
It's not improper because it's the third reading, so it's gonna be up to the Board of Education to vote. And again, NISBA does not regulate school districts. Boards of Education vote on the regulation. If they call it regulation, meaning the word policy is the regulation. So it's the third reading, so we need to take action. And again, Mr. Fromson did the revision following the policy committee meeting of January 29th. January 29th is when we met. So it's been overdue since January 29th, so.
Matt, in the form that you just handed me here, in the second paragraph that's shaded, it says NISBA suggests adding the underlying text. That's all it says. It says it's a suggestion. It's not a, it's
So
not.
don't we like to follow the suggestion of?
We have
of
several.
the authorities that we
I wouldn't say.
tend to ask
We have
for
several
opinions?
policies where the wording is different from the suggested language. This is not the only one, so.
We can vote.
Right.
Mr. Carter, quick question.
Yes.
The item comes in and it goes to the superintendent, and the superintendent makes the decision and denies, okay? So the appeal process, according to what you're saying, then will go to the superintendent again, right? So the superintendent has basically denied it the first time around. Why in the world do you think the superintendent on the appeal would then say, it's, I'm gonna deny it or I'm gonna accept it? What this policy does, it goes to the superintendent first, and then on the appeal process, okay, it goes to the Board of Education, the president. That seems to me to
And
be
then it's deliberated by
their
the board.
way of doing something. You don't
Okay.
want the same person
We're taking turns.
doing the first decision and then doing the appeal. Personally, that's my opinion.
Mr. McKenzie.
It's also important to note that when it comes to the president, it doesn't mean that the president makes a unilateral decision. The president brings it to the board deliberates on it, and the board makes a decision. So it's not as though the superintendent, like in the case of the superintendent, where he just makes a decision or she just makes the decision and that's it. It comes to the president, she brings it to the board collectively makes a decision, and that's the final.
I'm not so sure that the process that you're describing is entirely accurate. So, again.
How is it not accurate? There's a process, it's denied,
Okay.
and then where does it go?
I don't
Back
have
to the
the process with
superintendent.
me because
That
we weren't
that
prepared
doesn't
to
seem to
discuss
be
this
very
tonight.
fair.
It was on the agenda.
It's on the agenda since activation.
The process is before the process.
Well, it only defines where it goes to, and we had a discussion about this twice at the first and second readings.
I don't agree with it. I've stated my
Right.
case for not agreeing with it. If you
So
wanna
just,
call the vote, we can vote.
also the attorney direction at the policy committee meeting was, I just want clarity, your current policy doesn't say where appeals go.
Correct. It does
And
not.
it's up to the board to select how it's processed. It all has to come back to legal, because none of us can make legal decisions
And
without
again,
unilaterally.
My opinion is to follow the recommendations from NISBA. If that's not the opinions of others here, that's okay.
Wouldn't it make sense, excuse me, wouldn't it make sense to have an attorney review it?
We did, that
After
happened.
the appeal?
That's exactly what happened.
After
Yeah.
the appeal?
Yep.
And then bring it to the board as a whole?
The attorney reviews it each time. The attorney reviews it at the initial request and again when it's appealed, because a lot of it is stuff that needs to be redacted. You and I and the superintendent are not gonna
Absolutely, I
sit and
understand
redact it.
I
Yeah.
understand.
They look at it from a legal perspective every
Right.
time,
But I
every
think
time.
the attorney should have the final.
Yeah. The policy doesn't say the attorney, and it shouldn't, and it can't, because there has to be some, the attorney works for the Board of Education, basically, so the representation has to be district representation and not the attorney, although everything is checked with the attorney. Nobody's gonna make that distinction, because, there are so many rules as far as FOILs and what can be released and whatnot, so. So it's our third reading, and we've gotten the, discussions about this. This is the third and actually fourth, past the policy, third for the board meeting. So we have the motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those against?
Nay.
And any abstains?
Abstain.
Okay, motion fails. So we'll bring this back to further discussion, because the policy still doesn't provide the clarification that the attorney recommended. And we'll see if maybe adding language to what happens after the board might give us some unity in deciding on this, okay? So let's take this back to work, back to the drawing table, which is exactly why the process plays how it is. So 2.19, motion.
Move.
Mr. Shapiro, second.
I'll second it.
Mr. Donnelly, discussion.
I would just like to say that I do recognize the additional task that Dr. Castaldo has taken on. However, I'm not comfortable with the compensation that she's gonna be receiving. I think it's way over the top. That's all I can say. I'm just not comfortable with that kind of a raise.
Any further comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those against?
Nay.
Any abstains? 2.19 moved. This will bring us to the end of action items, and we will start with information items. A report by the Strategic Planning Committee, which ties into the item administrative report that's coming up as number 4, so.
So,
Mr.
we
McKenzie.
recently had a strategic planning committee meeting. There was very good attendance by the public. There was lack of attendance by the administration. We discussed rebalancing, and the rebalancing, we decided was going to move forward. It was going to be administratively driven, and Dr. Castaldo is going to report on that tonight, so I will leave it to her to do her administrative report.
Thank you, Mr. McKenzie. Second is a report from the Rockland County School Board Association meeting. I will report. I represented the Board of Education at the Rockland County School Board Association's meeting, which took place on April 8th. The meeting featured a presentation by Meredith Fox, you're probably familiar with her, from the Nanuet School District, as well as representatives from Child Care Resources of Rockland. The focus was an item that's near and dear to our heart, preschool and pre-kindergarten. And I learned a lot of information that I'm sure you have. And learned that our pre-K children in our districts across the state now have to take 3 tests as opposed to 2, which I thought that was excessive. And there was a focus on a discussion on the importance of the link between preschools and elementary teachers and principals in preparation for, so that they may prepare preschoolers to the elementary education that they're about to undertake. I learned about the P2 Summer Institute. They strongly recommended that.
I attended it last summer.
Yeah, so I don't know what your feedback from that is, but it was very interesting to just hear what other districts are doing, and obviously I was proud to talk about a little bit about our pre-K program that's in-house here at Viola, and our interest in making it a full day should the funding that we're advocating for become possible. And I brought a little package from Child Care Resources regarding the programs. You might have it, but I'm going to pass it along for you guys. And that is that was the main discussion. Now, the Rockland County School Board Association conducts or holds a annual dinner in May and selects a group of district employees to acknowledge every year. And this year, the decision, we voted to acknowledge assistant principals. So our assistant principals will receive an invitation from the Rockland County School Board, and I encourage my colleagues on the Board of Ed to try to make an effort to attend. I will send you an email with a date. It's going to be at the Nyack Seaport. Those of you who have attended before, it's usually a great event. So we'll have all our assistant principals from the middle and high school being acknowledged that evening. And that is the conclusion of the Rockland County School Board report. Next will be administrative reports, and Dr. Castaldo will report regarding rebalancing.
I know they said they loaded it on there, I'm not sure exactly where. Is it that one over there?
That's our strategic plan.
Yeah, but that might be what I titled.
Was it a PowerPoint?
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you, Ray. So as Mr. McKenzie reported, the strategic planning team did meet, and from that, we have a rebalancing report. We talked about, a focus group spoke about rebalancing. So if you can move to the next one. So the first piece we did was to define the issue. So if you look at the years, I'm gonna have to pull this. Oh. This is a cord, I can't walk around. So the average percentages of the kindergarten enrollment, that's the first column. If you look at the average percentage before 2016, Cherry Lane had 21% of the kindergarten students in Suffern Central. RP Connor had 27%. This is an average of about 10 years before that. Montebello had 21%. Sloatsburg had 13%, and Viola had 18%. Average total was 279 students. Now, as you can see, it's not that we expect the buildings to be of equal numbers or equal percentage of students, but they do have a historical trend to the percentages they did have. In 2011 and 2012, you can see that a skewing started to occur in the percentages. So Cherry Lane had 21% that year, RP Connor had 31%, Montebello was at 17%, Sloatsburg was at 10%, and Viola was at 22%, and a total number of students of 285. So you can see in 11-12, the population started to shift where they were living in Suffern Central. While our numbers stayed pretty steady, the population where they were living, where they were clustered, had shifted. So due to that skewing, the RP Connor going up to 31%, Sloatsburg going down to 10, Montebello going down to 17, there was a rebalancing that occurred for the 2012-2013 school year. And that brought the percentages again more to those historical averages of 21%, 23%, 25%, 14% for Sloatsburg, and 18% for Viola. And Mr. Donnelly, if you can put your arm straight out, that'll show everyone the column I was just looking at. Now, to your left,
My
just
left.
a little bit more.
My other left.
Well, no, 2013, 2012, 2013, just so we can see.
Third column.
Basically the middle
There
column,
you
just
go.
so everyone knows. Because I don't have a pointer and I can't walk right now, so unfortunately. There we go.
That's a professional
Dana
right
White
there.
has entered the building, thank you very much. So, what we're looking at this year in 18-19, Cherry Lane is at 13% of the kindergarten enrollment, current kindergarten enrollment. RP Connor is 27%, Montebello is 28%, Sloatsburg is 14%, and Viola is 17%, with a total of 255 students. So our number of students has gone down at this point, and there is a skewing even this year that has occurred. When we look at next year, 18-19, it's more skewed, it's more disturbing. Cherry Lane is 15% of the students. RP Connor is 41% of the current projected enrollment for kindergarten. Montebello is 24%, Sloatsburg is 9%, Viola is 12%, for a total of 211 students. That's a tremendous strain on the resources of one building, and a tremendous amount of students sitting in one building compared to the other buildings. That skewing is what we're looking to correct with rebalancing. So you could go to the next slide.
I'm sorry. Would you prefer to have questions
Okay, yeah,
as
we
we
could.
go, or do you want to hold them to the end?
Now, that's
Now?
fine.
Okay. The first column,
Yes.
the percent before 2016 is different from the years 11, 12, and 12, 13. So
Well, that's an average.
I just want to know that average. So that's
So
just
I
the
have-
average before, and I'm trying to figure out what the relevance is to that.
I was
Since
giving
we-
you the historical average, so that was taken from the years, I had 10 years worth of data. It was several years before 11-12 that the data started, up until this year. So that was just to give you an idea of the historical average. Was never that we were all completely even in percentages. We're expecting Sloatsburg to be lower, for instance. However, the percentages are off of what that historical average was.
You may not know the answer to this, but how many, so you said that, oh, sorry, maybe you do, that was a 10-year average?
Yes.
So it's from 06 to 16. Is that what we're saying? That first column is the average of 10 years?
I would say it was more
2006 to
07,
2016?
I think it was 07 to 17.
Okay.
But I can get you that.
Okay, it's,
7, 8,
Yeah.
9, 10,
okay,
11. 07 to 16 is the
right, okay.
Any other questions on that slide?
No, thank you.
Okay, so what has our process been to kind of address this? We had a brainstorming session with selected stakeholders. We then had the community forum, which was a part of the strategic planning committee meeting that we had. District leadership held a team work session last week. We've been refining that, myself and selected district leaders such as transportation, which is Ms. Rena Gessner, because she's highly knowledgeable about the transportation routes and what the neighborhoods look like. Lee Weber, Teresa Soldi has been a part of it as well. And we are now having tonight the Board of Ed information report. The brainstorming session, the goals that came out of that were to regain the balance in our kindergarten sections by adjusting catchment zones for enrollment trends and ensure equity and resource utilization. Again, we don't want too much strain on one building and other buildings having extra resources. Specifically, the brainstorming session resulted in the goal of, if possible, 2 sections of kindergarten in each of 4 of the buildings and 4 sections in 1 building. Considerations that have gone into place in all of the conversations we have had is looking at things like the building capacity, optimal class sizes for kindergartners, special programs enrollment such as ENL and special classes, housing growth that's projected in the area, projected enrollment trends, the transportation and traffic patterns, the geography and neighborhoods of the district, a timeline, siblings and what would happen in the case of siblings, and looking at a K enrollment plan moving forward after this rebalancing. So that's the district map. The district map and where our buildings sit, the geography of that, the neighborhoods factor heavily into where you can draw catchment zones. For instance, Sloatsburg is way up at that top left, middle left of that, the left part of the triangle. I'm sorry, Sloatsburg's way up there. There we go. And Cherry Lane's way at the other end. If you can get, I can do it from here. Cherry Lane's way at the other end of the triangle. In the orange.
Bottom right.
Okay, orange, in the orange. There we go. Oh, he's colorblind. So in the orange. So things like that factor heavily. Traffic issues such as traveling Route 59 before and after school is an issue. Also, so is Route 202. There's a tunnel area that's called, I want to say, the West Side. That's a problem as well. So, move to the next one. Additional consideration is where are these K enrollment cluster sections? So if you look at our enrollment and our population right now, obviously if they're primarily 41% sitting at RP Connor, it's because our enrollment clusters of kindergartners are situated in what would be that pink area. Tipping into the green right on top of it.
Looks like Long Island, yeah.
Yeah, that piece, tipping into the green. That's right here on, to the left of that.
Up there.
Tipping there.
Yeah.
We also have a cluster sitting in
Need
the
a laser
Hilburn
pointer.
area, which is that yellowishy above the green. Yeah, right there, we have a cluster as well. So we're looking at those areas right now and saying we have clusters of students, and how can we reroute students in those areas to balance the kindergarten enrollment. So right now, the rebalancing plan would adjust enrollment in those cluster areas to reach the goals of 2 sections in each building, 4 sections in the 1 building. The next steps in this are the final decisions to be made regarding which students, which neighborhoods, and notification of the families. Questions?
My only question is sort of broad. Probably can't even answer it now. You can probably answer it somewhat, but with the understanding that something needs to be done in the immediate future, and beginning with this rebalancing for kindergarten enrollment, what is the plan for the future? Because rebalancing kindergarten for next year is one step in a very long process. So I don't want to get ahead of myself or ahead of you, but what are we thinking for the future? Because this is simply a quick fix.
So this is a quick fix for next year, and it does fix the skewing that is occurring at a big rate for next year. Going forward, I've been in contact with Western Suffolk BOCES. They are the ones that did our original projection and enrollment plan. They have both software they can show us that will help us adjust for the numbers rebalancing going future if we just want to do that again. They can also do a follow-up to the projection that they did for us, the enrollment projection numbers that they did. They can complete that by the end of next year, and then we'd be able to have some real conversations about what would be the best way to handle the enrollment trends going forward. So of course, there's always the option of waiting until it gets skewed again and just rebalancing. There's always an option of completely looking at the elementary through grade 12 experience. Lee Weber's had a lot of thoughts on that as well, in looking at that elementary experiencing, and I love her term, and her phrase is reimagining the elementary experience. That might be something that we want to explore in the future as well. I think the best first step next would be, after the rebalancing, would be that enrollment plan, and going forward in a position of having information about what they're predicting.
And that would be where we would utilize somebody like Western Suffolk Coast.
Yes.
And that's something that we could do potentially next year.
Yes.
We would start right away as soon as we have the resources in our administrative buildings, possibly this summer, when, I don't know what's the best time in administration to have the work begin, because it may not take 1 year, it may take more than 1 year to make any changes, if there will be any, and it needs to be like
That first
a
step
thorough
again
process.
is partnering with Western Suffolk BOCES to have them give us an idea of
Data.
where they predict the enrollment will go in the future. We have several things coming up that will affect enrollment, things like the Sheldon and the Woodmont would affect enrollment as well, so we need their professional opinion on where that's gonna take us.
Mrs. Weber, you want to add anything?
No, Dr. Costello.
You good? And I just want to share something that was shared with us. I'm thinking about you from an educator perspective, sharing with the committee that, and it was a very well-attended meeting, so really thrilled about the numbers that showed up to participate and contribute questions and discuss really thoughtful discussions. So thank you for those who were there. One of the things that was striking, and I was like nodding, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, is that it's not really a great scenario for any of our elementary buildings to have only one unit coming into kindergarten, because that unit will continue to be one class only through their elementary experience. There is no chance of switching, changing things around. They're a very closed group, and then suddenly they're in a larger building with larger numbers. They haven't had the experience of getting, sifted around, and thinking from a parent perspective, I was nodding, that makes a lot of sense. They always made new friends, and they had those social experiences, and from an education perspective, it does make a lot of sense. So this way, none of our elementary buildings will have that one section only moving together for 5 years.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board member comments. We started with Mr. Kern, we started with Mr. Karen, so we're gonna change it around and start with, who's ready? Mr. McKenzie.
I just wanted to thank the folks of you, some of you are here tonight, that came to the sorry, let me turn this back on again, sorry. I was saying I just wanted to thank the folks that are here and those that couldn't make it tonight for coming to these strategic planning meetings and being able to help us with the process. Moving forward, Dr. Castaldo's presentation tonight was very comprehensive and shows everything but the final lines of what we're going to do. But it's important that we rebalance now, because as she said, the numbers are very skewed, and this gives us more time to, as we move forward, make a more educated plan going forward to make sure that we can utilize our resources the best and have our kids enjoy the experience here at Suffolk. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKenzie. Who's next? Anyone?
Okay, sure.
Why not?
I woke
Mr.
him up.
Shapiro?
No, you didn't wake me up, so obviously.
No, he was thinking. He was being thoughtful.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. If I ever wear something that looks really bad, it's because my wife is upset with me about something. And, she says, yeah, wear whatever you want. And I don't know what I want. So but she's used to it. A good thing, boys baseball won today 2-1. They were losing 1-0 going into the bottom of the 6th, and they were able to win. So congratulations to the boys baseball team. That's number probably 0 of all the important things. Congratulations to all of the teachers and administrators who received their tenure tonight. It's very special getting your tenure. Don and I both received it. It was special in the 1900s when we got it.
1847.
1847 for Don. I was right behind him in 1852. And it was special then, and it's just as special now. Suffern has a terrific wealth of staff members who are extremely bright, who are dedicated, who really give 100% to our kids, and in some cases our grandkids. And it's really great to see them getting recognized and getting the tenure that they deserve. In terms of the rebalancing, this is going to be a tough time. I remember when I had my children, and all of a sudden the schools that they were going to, they were shifted around. So I know how it feels to be a parent, where one year you're going to one school, and all of a sudden the following year you're going to a different school after thinking that you're going to be in that school for six years, and then it doesn't happen. But we have to take a look at the numbers, and we have to do what's right. And I know that Lee Weber is extremely experienced and is a great resource to have all of the different ideas. And you may want to go online just to get used to some of these ideas, where schools, actually the elementary schools, some of them in different districts in different states, have specialties, schools at the elementary level. You hear about it in high school, but some of them have it at the elementary level. And then there are elementary schools where it's, like K through 2, or it's paired schools, K through 2, and then the next one is 3 through 5, and everything gets shifted around. And it's tough in the beginning because it's change. Nobody likes change, even when it's for something great. But we just have to realize that things do change. They used to love having a rotary phone. Show it to our kids, and in some cases our grandkids. They have no idea what it is. And the 8-track used to be wonderful. What's an 8-track? So things change, and really things do change for the better. And it may be tough in the beginning, but we all get used to it, and then we say, wow, this is really terrific. So we'll be doing well, and I'm going to pass it to Don because he's itching to get it away.
Just
Thank you.
A little comment. When I was teaching at Northville High School, I actually had 5 children from the same family. But I actually didn't have the 5 children coming through my class. I had number 1, number 3, and number 5, basically going back and forth between Ramapo and Spring Valley. So, I'm sorry?
The better school.
Disagree.
But
We have
you tell me
feud here.
what a Griffin is. Come on, let's see. I'm very impressed with the number of the programs at Suffern. In particular, I attended the spaghetti dinner. It was really good spaghetti, okay? But more importantly, the number of people who attended and the number of students who participated in that program was really, really good. It's the same thing when I went to the STEAM program, okay? I think you know by now I'm very interested and I want to push for the robotics club. I know they're going out to compete in the world competition. I hope all of you will make that donation and make it successful. And I'm looking really for the program to really start off in the elementary, go to the middle school, and top it off in terms of the high school. The number of scholarships that the students are receiving, okay, because they're in the robotics program is phenomenal. And more importantly, the number of females who are in that program who are going into engineering, okay? 3 of them were going into engineering. I think the 4th one was computer studies. So Suffern has a great history, and the idea of being on the board is to make sure that we keep the fiscal responsibility, okay, as low as possible, but yet make sure we have the highest level of success for the students in the district. You did okay?
Thank you, Mr. Cairns.
Well,
Mr. Donnelly, would you like to add any comments?
Yeah, I'd just like to congratulate Judy Veltiti, whose husband Bobby actually coached here for some 30 years. He was inducted into the Rockland County Hall of Fame over the weekend. I know he did a tremendous amount of work with me. I hold him in the...
you right out.
But I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. It couldn't have happened to a better guy. Well deserved. I think he wears blue and white better than black and gold. I really do think he bleeds suffering. So Judy, again, congratulations. You're a great guy. You did a good job. You did the good one.
Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. Mr. Kern? No comments? I'll be really brief. The worst thing about being the last one is you've said everything I wanted to say. I'll be really quick. The Rockland County School Board dinner is June 12th, if you want to make a note of that. It's a Wednesday evening, I believe. And again, at the IXC board. It was great honoring the 10-year recipients. We appreciate all their work, and it's always delightful to see the families' impressions and pride, and to get to meet the families, especially the little ones that are beaming with pride for dad or mom. It's always fun to have them around. Always a pleasure to honor our National Merit nominees and finalists. They've worked very hard to achieve that coveted status. STEAM was incredible on April 6th. Escaping Chernobyl was not easy. I wouldn't have figured how to get out of there. The kids did, and it was amazing seeing the young students interacting with the older students. They were very excited and motivated because the instructions were given by our high school students, so that interaction was actually really a joy. I have a couple of really amazing pictures of them all huddled and trying to figure out the chemistry tables that I found very difficult in school. Also, I want to thank Ms. Isolde and the business department of Suffern Central for all your hard work to produce a budget that we support. And I also wanted to thank Dr. Castaldo for her work with the entire administrative staff in Suffern to produce the rebalancing formula in time for kindergarten registration. So thank you for all your work. Finally, I'd like to call public participation. Public participation on non-agenda items. Please introduce your name and your affiliation with the district.
My name is Eileen Sheldon.
One second.
Okay.
Our district clerk will be the timekeeper. You have 3 minutes, and the entire segment is 30 minutes long. Please address all comments to the Board of Education president and refrain from discussing a staff member or a student. Thank you.
My name is Eileen Sheldon. I'm a parent of 2 children in Connor Elementary. And tonight I ask the board as a parent and an educator to be careful as you forge ahead. At a time when public education is under attack from every angle, I fear that the current path we are on, what it could do to our children, our schools, and our district. Recent events do not portray Suffern Central in a very positive light, and no doubt it will impact the quality of educators from the classroom to the district office that we can draw in. The lasting impact of your actions could go on long beyond your time of sitting on this Board of Education, making us vulnerable to many unwanted and potentially unintended outcomes and consequences. Calling teachers and community members' actions deplorable for exercising our democratic right to question our elected officials is insulting. The election of 2018 may be over, but the next one is right around the corner. And it is our right, in fact, our duty, to question your actions and motives if we feel they do not best serve Suffern Central and its children. Admonishing us for not coming to meetings more regularly is also a slap in the face to many working families, which is what this district is. There is an unspoken trust that we as a community gives you when we elect you to the Board of Education. We shouldn't have to be at every meeting to test your honesty. Agendas are posted, meetings are recorded, we have the capacity to monitor from home, and when as a parent, a teacher, or a community as a whole, we are not comfortable with the direction you are taking us, we take our opportunity to come and speak our voices. I wonder how many meetings you attended regularly before becoming members of the Board of Education yourselves. You want us to trust you, but I know that over a month ago, a parent foiled information from you and has yet to get it received. How are we supposed to feel that you have our children's best interest in heart when this is your behavior? Certain media outlets, although, are getting information they foil in a timely fashion, which is also concerning to us. The tone and belligerence at times that has been directed at parents is at best inappropriate and often offensive. If teachers ever spoke to parents or children the way you spoke to us at several meetings over the last few weeks, we would be reprimanded. You are bringing about a rift in our district that may be driven to a point of being irreparable. So please consider your legacy. Consider what you want to be remembered as the Board of Education of Suffern Central. Did you build us up or open us up for problems? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening, my name is Teresa DeFalco. I'm a parent in the district. As a past board member and past president of this district, I made certain observations of this board over the last 10 months regarding how the board works, the actions you've taken, the discord you've created, and the absolute lack of transparency you've shown this community. If I remember correctly, the Kids First slate of candidates ran their campaign claiming discord among the board, claiming that the board did not listen to the kids in the community, and claiming lack of transparency. Well, over the past 10 months, you have not only perfected those three, you have far exceeded all that was imaginable. With respect to lack of transparency, this Board of Ed has logged approximately 480 hours of meetings, with 337 of those hours in executive session, 70% of your time. 26 meetings held thus far during your tenure, 13 half special meetings. Let's compare that to last year, which is average for the years prior to that. 20 meetings in the entire year, 1 special meeting. 53 hours of total meetings, 24 hours in executive session, for 45% of the time in private. Yet with that small number of meetings, we were still able to make sure that our district was top in the county, top 35 in the state, and top 100 in the country. So we're not a falling plane, or whatever the discussion was at the March 19th meeting by one of the board members. If you look back historically, the numbers of special meetings were nominal, and more hours are spent in public than in private. That's transparency. Mr. McKenzie said the excuse for having these special meetings was to get things done. But clearly, we didn't have that many special meetings, and we got a lot of work done, and maintained, actually increased greatly, our averages and our percentages in being a top-rated school. So I can only assume that the reason for the special meetings was with respect to the agenda setting, which has been a huge issue and a topic of conversation with this board and this president for many, many years. Special meetings, the agenda is set the same way. The policy does not distinguish between special and regular meetings. So if you guys were creating these special meetings and these agendas outside of the superintendent's knowledge, then you were violating policy each and every time. Discord and divisiveness. Look around and you don't need to say much about it. Watch the videos of the meetings. However, one thing I will say, having all of these people, and I kind of add on to what you said, having all of these people at the meetings is not what you want. For a Board of Ed member to say that that is a positive thing, they're out of touch with reality. The public doesn't want to have to come to meetings. The kids don't want to have to stand up here and speak. The public wants this board to act professionally and responsible and in the best interest of this district. What the public does want is they want to be home watching Game of Thrones, not sitting here at a meeting. When the policies don't fit your agenda, you change the policies. When the people who work in the district don't give you the answers you want, you replace them. When it's not enough to replace them, you hire special investigators, special attorneys, or special friends to go on a wild goose chase to find that needle in a haystack. And all of that leaves the door wide open for corruption and misallocation of resources in violation of your fiduciary duties as board members dealing with $141 million
Thank you for
taxpayer
concluding.
dollars.
3 minutes.
If I could just finish my
Please
thought.
wrap up, yes.
Although this board will deny, it clearly has offered payback for the getting elected last year. You have a district clerk, election clerk, who helped with your campaign.
Please wrap up.
What are you going to do to ensure that this year's election is going to be not only fair, impartial, and legal, but that it will be
Thank you.
won't be biased by his allegiance to the Kids First people. There's also a security company that is the
Okay,
partner of the
the
security
time is
company.
up. You asked to conclude.
I just want to finish I just have one
But
small thing.
please.
I will, hurry up.
We're done.
I'm trying to
Thank
speak
you.
really fast.
Thank you very much.
The partner in the security company is an ex-partner of Angus Mackenzie's. I don't know if that was disclosed up during the meeting. There's also a solar power company who is being
Ex-partner.
solicited by by
All right.
Mr. Cairns, who has a friend who's the principal of this solar company. He has not only pushed and pressured staff members to deal with this solar company, he has also
Okay, we
said
need to
that that's why
conclude,
he
and
voted
this
for
is
the
overtime.
teachers-
Please
He
stop.
voted for the teacher's contract, so he needs this
Next.
contract and the solar
Thank
company
you.
deal to go through. That, my friends, leads to corruption,
Thank you very
inappropriate, and
much.
misallocation of money. I just have one comment about the
No,
one
there
meeting
is
from
no
last
further
week.
comment, please.
This-
Somebody else. Order, please. We're done. Thank you.
This Board of Ed,
We're-
under this
Thank you very
president,
much.
cornered up an employee at the last meeting, the strategic planning
Please
committee
move
meeting,
on.
cornered them
Ms.
in-
DeFalco,
in
your
a
time is
meeting,
up.
And basically, from our view,
Okay,
public
the
view,
time is up, and
attacked her. She was in the corner of
Mr.
the
Gisono,
room
the time is
and
up.
had four
I've been
board
saying the
members-
time is
four
up.
board members, which is actually a meeting
Please.
under New York State law. which
Please
was not
address
voted,
your
nor was
concerns
not-
in writing.
Nor was
Go
not
ahead.
publicized, and in fact, I think 3 of the board members had no idea that there was a meeting going on.
Thank you.
That being said, I thank you for giving me, being giving me the courtesy.
Well, you've been in my
You know, the
place
extra
before,
couple minutes.
and you need to continue
And I've never,
to
and I've
3
never
minutes,
stopped
please.
anybody from talking.
So we're gonna be in breach of policy. Next? No, absolutely not. No, we're not gonna engage. Next, Ms. Rader. It's easy to talk. I apologize, you had to wait.
That's fine, because I really share a lot of the sentiments of our former speakers, but that's not why I'm here tonight. I just wanted to thank the board for accepting the tenure of some of the colleagues that received their tenure tonight. I'm privileged to work with Carolyn Scoglin, who is generous of heart and spirit. We've shared students and we've worked together. She's a delight to work with. I've also had the honor to work with Danielle Castaldo. She was an amazing special ed supervisor, and then while we mourned her departure as our supervisor, we were delighted to have her back as our assistant principal. Her leadership is great, and one of the things that stand out most is last year on DC, she showed that leadership by helping me clean up projectile bus sickness for one of our students. So she is near and dear to my heart. I also recently joined the Green Team at SMS, and under the leadership of Karen Mena and Elio Ficarella, who are just terrific. We are moving on a forward path toward adopting 21st century green sustainable initiatives. I also would like to thank the board for continuing to support us as we look into further greening our cafeterias through the consideration of removing styrofoam trays, moving to paperboard, and hopefully eventually moving to reusable food trays, which you're going to hear more about from the kids in the coming weeks. And I'd like to give a special shout out to the hardest working woman in show business, Teresa Soldi, for helping the Green Team answer questions during her establishing of her budget presentation for tonight. She's been helpful with talking about the potential economics of these changes. She really is such a valued member of our district. She's offered to come and help the kids and talk to them about the economics so that they can understand what goes into it. So thank you very much for all your work, Teresa. I hope you're appreciated by everybody as much as we appreciate you. Lastly, I would encourage the board to attend one of the great things that happens in our district, the 12th annual string extravaganza at the high school tomorrow at 7:30. I've been a parent volunteer since my daughter was in 4th grade. She's now in her 3rd year of college, and I still volunteer. It's an amazing group of students, 450 children from 5th grade through 12th grade. The dedicated effort of our music staff is unparalleled by any district in, I don't know, I would say the country. So I would encourage you to come out and see some of the good things that our district does. That is why we are so emotional about what happens in our district, how other people view us. And I just want you to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mrs. Cooper?
Hi, Melissa Cooper, one of the 11 nurses in the school district. I just have a quick question. Action item 2.06, contract for nursing services. Can you just explain what that was? Are you allowed to
It's
do
your
that?
choice, yes.
Each year, the middle school takes a Boston and a Washington DC trip.
Okay.
None of the school nurses were able to go on, so that's the special contract, so that we can
Okay.
have a school nurse on each of those trips, because that's our usual practice.
Thank you, Mrs. Cooper. Any further comments?
Hi, my name is Jonathan Turco. I live in Southern New York. I do appreciate you guys staying underneath the tax cap. That's great for our community. For those that were endorsed by our current mayor in the village of Suffern, he is proposing a 14% tax increase, which would probably affect our district tremendously. So I hope that those of you with relationships with them would maybe reach out to hope that they can bring that level down, because right now we're about to bust the cap, about 12%, which is going to drive a lot of for sale homes in the higher one. So I know that some of you guys have close relationships with them, so if you guys can reach out with them, on our behalf, we'd really, really appreciate it. Mr. McKenzie, maybe you reach out to Clark, that would be great. Thanks.
Any further comments? Seeing there are none, we will close this segment. I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
No, that's fine. I wasn't sure if you
Go right ahead.
So, my name is Joe DeLalla. I've been living in Suffern for about 4 years. I actually lived down the block from Mr. Cairns, knocked on my door when he was campaigning. I would like to know, I have twins who go to Wise Beginnings. They're 4 years old, they're about to be 5. I'd like to know when we're gonna get to see the new map. We have some concerns on what school they're gonna be going to.
So if you would kindly email Dr. Castaldo directly.
Okay.
She will be able to probably give you direction on what to expect.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Seeing there are none, we will now close this segment. We've closed the segment, but yes, if I have permission from everyone to.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hello,
Informal vote, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Therese Delala. That was my husband Joseph that just stepped up. I'm sorry, I did not prepare a speech. I did not prepare to speak this evening. I'm just curious, you said that we could email Dr. Castaldo about the rezoning. Why is it that if you have the information, it has not been released to the public yet?
They've been working on it.
So if you were to send an
I'm
email-
assuming as soon as they have it, they can advise individual parents.
Okay, because we're just curious, right now, we're at RP Connor, and we bought our house 4 years ago, specifically because we would be attending RP Connor. We have family that goes there. Not to say that any of the schools are better than any of the others. I don't know enough about them really to make that opinion. But we're just curious if we're going to be moved, when we're gonna know, because I have an interview in 3 weeks at RP Connor for my kids. I mean, while you're saying we could send an email and find out, but yet there are so many parents in the dark that don't know
So-
when and where.
None of the decisions have been made firmly yet. Part of that is because no matter when we look at the map, it keeps changing the number of students in each catchment zone.
Okay.
Those decisions will be made by the end of this week or next week, so that in advance of going to those registration dates, you would know which school to go to. All of our elementary schools are obviously very good, they're very strong schools. I can guarantee you that, I think it was, you have twins?
I do,
You
yes.
said, twin 4-year-olds?
Yes.
They'll have a fabulous experience wherever they are, but we will let you know that information as soon as we have it. As I referenced before, Ms. Gesner and I have been working on it daily to kind of firm up the streets for sure. I know that Mr. Shapiro commented about students and changing buildings. What we're trying to identify and have been able to identify to some extent at this point are students who do not have siblings already in a school, and so therefore it wouldn't be that a family has, you know, 2 different elementary schools that their children would be in. So, but I will let you know as soon as possible.
So that's something you're working on if somebody is already, like my sister-in-law has 2 in RP Connor and she has 2 going into RP Connor. You wouldn't necessarily separate.
Correct.
Correct. So
We
you're
are
working
looking to not do that. We're identifying kindergartners who are in clusters and do not have siblings already in the school.
Right, and I think we're all in agreement that you don't want 89 children in one school and 15 in another. So I think we're all in agreement for safety reasons and for educational reasons. I guess I speak on behalf of the parents that are just very confused. You know, like I said, we go to our Wise Beginnings preschool, and the PTA president, there's 20 students that just don't know where they're going next year. And
So
it is.
you will have that information very quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're now gonna have to close this segment because it's not supposed to be a question and answer session, it's supposed to be comments, but you're welcome to come up.
I'll make a comment.
If you can, okay.
I'll make a comment. I won't make it a question. I didn't really want to give up. Just my comment about the rezoning, I'm hearing these young families, Amy Bloom from, my children go to 3 schools in the district. So it didn't really come up at that meeting, and it's been a thought of mine since then, and just listening to them. For kids who have kindergartners and the rebalancing, the following year, the concern would be if there's no younger children in those same areas that are being rezoned. Is there consideration, I'm sure there is, but that in the years to come, that these families won't then, you know, now their 2-year-old or 3-year-old who's in kindergarten might now have to go to another school to rebalance, and yet their kindergartners are now in, you know, 2nd or 3rd grade. And just because, I don't know if there's information that like the younger siblings of those, because we're just looking at kindergartners.
We can't do that.
To do the rebalancing, so a concern that we're just gonna keep rebalancing and keep moving people around would keep young families, you know, like we had talked about at the meeting, you know, you wanna say when you buy your house that this is where you're zoned for, and just that it doesn't keep changing. So for this following year, we understand it, and we all know something needs to be done, but just to consider that, you know, I don't know if we've looked at younger siblings in those same areas that are being moved.
You don't want to. You could just go with them.
Sorry, if you recall at the meeting, we did speak a little bit about how often we've needed rebalancing. So the skewing has occurred, the last major redistricting was done in 2004, 2005. Then there was the contemplation of doing it in 2008, but it was not done. It was done in 2011. We're looking at again doing it now. So typically in this district, when we've rebalanced, those lines have held fast and worked well given enrollment for 4 to 6 years. The point of doing the Western Suffolk BOCES updated study would be to let us know that that is going to be what holds true for us as well. We wouldn't be looking to rebalance again over and over. What we'd be looking to do possibly after that study is actually looking at the entire elementary experience. And that would take several years to put into effect, to even come up with the plans of what we would want. And that would mean that these children that we're moving right now would be in 4th or 5th grade at that point. Younger siblings would be following along because we're not going to be looking to move those lines again that quickly.
Thank you, Dr. Castaldo. At this time, we will close this segment and acting superintendent comments.
Yes, that's me again. I just wanted to say, some of the speakers spoke about it as well. We've had some marvelous things go on in the district in the past few weeks. The STEAM Expo, and we'd like to thank the Reach Foundation for all of their support of that. It was a fabulous experience. Let me talk a little bit about what I've seen in the classrooms. We do a lot of project-based learning, and Ken Wojciechowski is our project-based learning coach. That's tough this time of night. And in Sloatsburg Elementary, I was able to go to Farmville, where they're building chicken coops and milking cows and getting water out of the ground. So that was a fabulous experience to see as well. And today I got to see peep nests being built in RP Connor. So we have some great things going on. both after school and in our classrooms, to give our students those innovative learning experiences that Suffern Central is known for. And it's happening K-12, all 7 buildings. So I just wanted everyone to be aware of that. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you for any of the comments that you made. They only inform us for the future.
Thank you, Dr. Castaldo. We need a motion to adjourn the Suffern Central School Board meeting. Mr. McKenzie, second. Mr. Cairns, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those against? Thank you, everyone.
Easy drive.
What time is it? We adjourned. Help me out because I'm blind. Who is that? All right. No, I didn't have. I'm wondering which one it is. This one. 3 of the same, right? It's killing me, man. One thing I'm not gonna miss.
What's up?
Yes, okay.
Next time I sit next to you, I'll be quiet, I promise. I won't say anything.
I'm not sitting anywhere near.
Oh, come on.
Nope.
I'll be quiet, I promise.
I can't do it. She did not like my microphone being up there.
It didn't? Who did it? Didn't like your microphone being up there?
Yeah, I had it right on the table.
Why?
I don't know, because she was having a private conversation with Angus, maybe. And
Oh, well, she was the one having a private conversation. It's going to be awkward than anything else.
she didn't want to. Well, she's got to tell him what to say.
To what? You're up to what?